Welcome to Value Through Vulnerability. This is a podcast dedicated to putting the human back into humanity, and we're boosted by Humans First, and are grateful to have both Humans First founder Mike Picanti with us today, and our joint guest is Kim Ingelby, who is a multi-award winning performance coach, TEDx speaker and author. And welcome to the podcast, Kim. How are you?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I am good. I'm excited to be with you both. A little bit nervous, although I've done many podcast interviews for some reason, because there's two of you. I'm slightly on the edge of my stool, but I'm well, and I'm looking forward to having a chat and hopefully helping the listeners in some way, giving them something that is worth their value to listen.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for joining us. And I hope that I'm slightly less scary than Mike for you today, Kim, but we'll come back to that later. Would you mind just giving our listeners who have kindly joined us just a bit of more of an overview? So where does this passion for high performance sort of coaching come from? What's your background and how did you get into that?
Oh, big question. My passion comes from a strong desire to help people feel good in themselves, actually feel, so believe in themselves, but feel that they are good enough. And with that, have the ability to perform. So my business is Energize Performance, and the Energize bit is the feeling internally and how you are as a person, and then the performance is obviously how you perform in life and work and sport. And I think it's been a journey, like everybody, through my whole life, but it was what I wanted to do from a very young age. But I had a very challenging childhood from kind of 8 onwards, a lot of bullying and things, and very complex, in depth for years. And I think that led me to really wanting to help people professionally not be in that place that I was in, or many people are, give them something that might give them hope or a tool or something, but still see them as human. Because I think often when people are going through things, the human bit of them is lost, whereas I see the potential still, even if there is the mess. So I want to help people. Then the performance side was, I found animals and horses, and I started riding, and I rode for Scotland, although I don't sound Scottish. I rode for the Scottish under-21 team, and I was just curious that so many humans were doubting their own performance, and they were putting so much time and training and energy into these beautiful horses and getting, the horses were in top shape, and then the riders were doubting themselves. And so it was like an evolution of I want to help someone just as they are to believe in themselves, and that's so different for every person. And then I want them to be able to do those things they say, I wish I could, but I can't, or I wish I could perform better, but I'm really nervous, or I doubt myself. And I've worked with an incredible blend of people, and how we see ourselves and how people see ourselves is often very different. And I still get nervous working with people because I see them and I think, well, surely they'll feel like this. And I have to stop myself, because we all are human, we all are complex. And so, my passion and purpose, professional training and empathy, is hopefully to bring things together to give someone courage to live their best life.
Just what a beautiful, it's beautiful. The thing is, what comes up for me straight away though, Kim, is just how relevant all of that lived experience is for our time right now. What we're navigating, the rapid change, lockdown, big system discussions, all of these things need our humanity to move it forward. And I just really think that belief bit, I'd love to hear from Mike, because I know Mike wrote a book about belief. So I just think there's a lovely conversation emerging here, Mike.
There's a fabulous conversation, and I love that point of view, Kim. And, bringing in that, there's a great sense of self, right? And focusing there first about what is the real potential. I heard you express how it can change our expectations of outcomes. And I think that's such a brilliant tie from when you take a look from the athletic lens, which is, certainly a big part of that foundation, I think what people often miss is performance is not really a decision. It's a series of consistent practices that build toward the event. And that self-discovery and empathy that you were talking about seems to really be such a fabulous foundation and underpinning for their potential and their possibilities. So I love that you focus on the individual and then how they can perform out in the bigger scene or in the arena, if you will.
Yeah, I absolutely. It's evolved, because a lot of people say, I don't want to work on myself because it's selfish, and I don't want to be arrogant. Those are the two things that people always say, and I felt that too in the past. And I realized that you have to have a sense of yourself, and you don't need to think that you're brilliant, but you need to know that you're okay, and you need to know that you've got your own back. And that's the foundation for me with helping someone, is that I know that they've got the resources and resilience to cope. And when I'm working with, extreme adventurers, or, media people, or CEOs, or whoever I'm working with, the performance is maybe why they've come, but there is a disconnect from their happiness. So they've almost like achieved great performance. They've come to get some tools to help them enhance their life even more, but they have a disconnect with their own happiness. And if I can help them reconnect with that, they then perform better. If they perform better, they are they're still disconnected often. The second thing that then helps, if they've connected with themselves, is should they get injured, should they get ill, should COVID happen or whatever, their identity is, of course, maybe an athlete, but it's not just that. And so I know that they have some resources in their resilience bucket, as it were, that can balance their stress bucket. And I always say the resilience bucket is actually where you put all your joy and your happiness and your sharing, because so many people don't, the happy bucket doesn't kind of, the more you fill up that with good things, it actually builds your resilience. And that resilience helps you to cope in a crisis or in chaos. And often things like that happen unexpectedly, in sport or adventures, and, like the weather or just something random. There's so many things that are random that could happen on a big or little scale. So the more you've got your own back and you're committed to yourself, the more also the relationships around you can evolve. And you also understand, if you're not okay, that you're not okay in that moment or that day or that week, but you're not then tagging it back sort of 5, 10, 20 years and going, I failed. You're just going, right now, I'm not okay. I'm curious about that. So that's a question I ask clients, is like, be curious about the habits you have at the moment, or the thoughts that aren't helpful. Like, kind of try and find the why with them. And then how can you be more helpful to yourself? Because those positive affirmations generally don't work if someone's really stuck. So it's giving them like a stepping stone of exercises depending on where they find themselves.
Oh, Gary, I'm sorry to jump in right away, but I'm just hoping that the listeners maybe rewind that piece and listen to there's so much depth in there, Kim, and it's beautiful. And what really struck me is when you were talking about the resilience bucket, holding the happiness and the joy, and I know that you're talking about happiness in the scientific sense of happiness, right? It's not like, the laughter watching a cartoon. It's the true sense of self and that joy and that happiness. But that resilience bucket is, I say in my book, I recount and give encouragement. Find a moment in your life, because we all have them, when you experience that extreme resilience.
Yeah.
And pull yourself back there and know that you have the strength to come through. And I love how you made that so present, that coming through, being in the day, being in the moment, that those moments don't define you. And there, you just unwrapped so much personal strength and encouragement. It was beautiful. So I'm sharing more of a reflection, not followed by a question, but I want to just say that I'm moved by that strong guidance to help people.
Thank you. You can see
Beautiful.
Gary's he's going. He's got a question, hasn't he?
I'm just, to be honest with you, Kim, I'm sort of stuck with Mike, really. What really come up for me so powerfully is where you said, taking that, like that pause. I know you speak in your TED talk as well about pause. Is that actually, it's almost giving ourselves permission to slow down, to ask why. Why do I feel this way? What is behind that belief? I think maybe this, like the pandemic pause, as some people are calling it, we've sort of been forced to stare at some of those beliefs, maybe not even by choice. And I wonder what your experience with sort of the clients you're working with at the moment, in terms of, are you experiencing that people are seeing and sensing more than they have done in years gone by because they've been forced to be situated in place and seeing at 40 miles an hour rather than 100 miles an hour?
I don't want to make any assumptions because I don't know who's listening at all, and all I can say is I speak from my experience in the last 3 or 4 months in the UK, in Bristol, and even the other side of Bristol is different to this side, and so whatever I share now, it's with respect, and hopefully it helps. But what I've noticed is the pandemic is different for everybody, completely different. But every single client that I've supported has said, I'm sure everyone's feeling like this. And I'm like, no, it's different for everyone. So it's like, again, meet yourself with where you're feeling. Another thing that has been very common is, I shouldn't feel like this because I haven't had anybody directly affected. So I shouldn't feel ABC, but I do. And so I try and get them to take the word should out and go, I do feel like this. Because the more you suppress anxiety or fear or stress, the more it just manifests in your body. And, I've learned that. Another thing is, I should go and see people if it starts unlocking. So like the unlocking anxiety is there. My personal observation from everyone that I coach is actually that unless you are directly affected with COVID or you're working on the front line, so those clients are different, and I treat them with respect. They're different. The other clients, all their fears are there. They're just heightened because of the situation. So the clients that had, and some of this may trigger people, so I say that first, but the clients with like eating disorders or body dysmorphia or any form of addiction, that is often heightened because it's a way of controlling things, because everything else is out of our control. The clients that wish they were like in a relationship, that's just heightened and they feel kind of lonely on their own. The clients that are in a family unit that wish they had some space, want some space. So it's kind of interesting that all of these things are still like they're normal, but they're just heightened. And so I'm not reducing it by using the word normal. I'm just saying that they're still there. And, clients are still, and people, humans, myself included, are still resisting doing some change, because almost like the pandemic is a distraction, but also a reality that's stressing us. And so I've spoken to people and said, you've got to be compassionate to yourself, but also committed, because, how will this unfold? We don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't really go into the discussions with people about that because, that's not my thing. But I say you can make an educated guess in terms of where you are, and then make your own decisions of like, I don't think I'm going to be able to travel till this time, or I don't think I'll see my family till this time. And if you can own those decisions and say it comes forwards to an earlier point, that's amazing. But if you're waiting and waiting, it's like that may never happen, but you could actually take ownership of it. And when people are saying, but what about the winter, and what if there's a second wave? I say, okay, what are your fears if there's a second wave? You know, what are your fears if you're UK-wise or wherever you are and it's winter and it's dark? And like, how can you protect your immunity? And what would you do? And so we kind of like turn and face it all. We're like, I don't want to do that, Kim. I'm like, but trust me, if we do that, it's not going to make it a bed of roses, but it is going to give you a crib sheet that you can pull out that sheet and go, these are the things that I want to do. And like, these are the financial plans that would help me. And these are the connections I need to work on. And these are maybe the things I need to ask for support with. Because self-care is great, but self-care is also, I believe now, through all this training and the stuff I've done myself, it's asking yourself hard questions. It's like making yourself type the hard email or
We lost your, you've gone mute.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you back. Thanks, Kim.
I hear you.
No,
You can't hear.
Can't hear us?
I hear you.
Oh, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, I can hear you now. I couldn't hear you. When did you lose me?
Only about 10 seconds.
Hard decisions. The hard decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to make hard decisions to commit to yourself, you know, to allow yourself to change. And if listeners are listening and thinking, oh, it's easy for you because you're a coach, and you know, it's humans, like, look at humans and you make assumptions just because you do, like it's normal, like that is normal. But I have had 2 or 3 most recently, like, significant events in my life that I know that it's hard to ask for help if you're not okay. I also know if you're not okay, the people that care about you can offer as much help as you like, but you may not want to take it. And so that's where, like, the self-care bit is, it's like your responsibility. And if you can, when you're okay, you know, write that crib sheet of like, if I'm not okay, I need to journal, have a breakfast, breathe, eat these foods. And it's not like there's nothing perfect. Every client is different. Every person is different. For me, like in terms of food, but like, what is simple and easy if you're not okay? And like, who's the person that you need to call and like save some money for that commitment to coach? Or, you know, it's like, give yourself that opportunity to grow and evolve. But it might be messy. It might be uncomfortable. It might not be great, but maybe that's what you need more than the distraction of something else. But if the distraction keeps you okay for a few weeks, don't then beat yourself up for doing the distraction, because maybe that's like your last resort, but it's working, so it's okay. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. And Gary, you know what I'm loving about this is how many references that you made with the uniqueness of each person. And you had said, you know, meet yourself where you're feeling, which is a brilliant thing to say. But you know, Gary, why I like this so much is, you know, Kim, you're expressing that the best practice is the one that works for you. It's not a magic pill that we can mass produce and distribute and, you know, I have one coming your way, right? You help that person discover what's best for them with a vision, or what's best for them in the moment to be strong in the next moment. And that presence that you're speaking to and the uniqueness of each person is really a wonderful articulation of, I think, you're caring for those people. There's depth to caring when you can see each individual need and recognize that, rather than some universal fix and you're going to bring and apply that Band-Aid to everyone. And so I just really respect how you approach that.
Thank you. I mean, I value that greatly, because I really do care about people. And I've also been told I'm very science trained, but I'm very intuitive. And people often say, oh, you're psychic coach Kim. And they're like, how did you know that? Like, and it's just, I think with my childhood experiences and the empathy I have, that can sometimes cause challenges, because I don't have the universal, like, this is my, you know, system set for everybody. But I do have like basic things that help everyone, because I also respect and honor that actually not everyone wants to do like loads of personal growth and personal development at all. Like it's work as well as like joy and growth. And I really respect someone that just wants to have a bit more energy. And so then it's like, look at your food, your hydration, your sleep, you know, your basic Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like look at that and let's just do some little tweaks, and you're on your way, and that's all you want, and you're happy. And I really admire and love that about someone, if that's all they want. And then if someone else wants to evolve and do something else, I'll help you. When someone says, you know, I could never do that, I genuinely believe that they could, but it may take 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, depending on finances, family situation. And I think we're often so pressured on ourselves of like, I need to do it this year, and if I don't, I failed. And I'm like, well, it may take 3 years, or it may take 5 years, and it will look different to how you think you should do it. And I've had to learn that greatly the last 7 years with, you know, the health things. And so, yeah, I think I get all the personal lessons to be able to empathize and then professionally give the tools on top. So that's I think I've had enough lessons, but I'm sure they'll keep coming because that's life.
I love how you balance two really powerful words for me, which is passion and commitment. Because I think it's just really, what I'm learning, Kim, even right now as well, is this paradox. Like we've sort of been brought up on a system of right and wrong, and not actually that messy middle. Like it's actually, how do we actually hold that? Like I really believe, or I want to be better, or I want to grow over here, but actually I need to do the work as well. You know,
you have to. Yeah,
we're so, you know, I remember I don't think we're used to getting the real, true messages. We're used to getting like utopian messages, or here's the quick fix, here's the silver bullet. And I just love how you positively create that space for your clients to say, actually, like, it is going to be hard work, but it's going to be fun getting there. I can sense that in you, in like how you work with people. And it's just really, really inspiring. Yeah,
I think it's like sharing the joy of the journey, but also the struggle, like without that sounding too much of a like written line, which it definitely wasn't, but I could hear it thinking it sounded like it. But it's often we don't share the joy, like me too, like you don't share the joy of the journey, and we don't share the struggle. We're kind of fearful of both. And you know I've found that too, like you fear, most people I work with, they're scared of failing, but they're way more scared of succeeding, so they're kind of in the middle. And I think that's because if you succeed, you're then different. Like, no, that came across wrong maybe, but if you're like super successful, whatever that means externally, then you may not be relatable to everyone else, and people like want to be part of community. So how can you define like what success means to you? And a lot of people I work with externally have that success, but internally don't have the contentment, like I spoke about earlier. And I think success is it's knowing yourself and knowing the people around you, you know, who you love, and you know your way of loving and how you want to spend your time. And when you're old, how you want to, older, whenever you want to reflect back on your life, but actually tomorrow, you know, how do you want to reflect back on your life?
Wow. So how you described that was not lost. I don't think you misstated. I actually think it was just so bold. And you know what came up for me, and looking at that success measure, I think sometimes we don't internalize that. And I love how you're encouraging people to find that. And I'll give a quick example. You know, there's been times in my career where we get to the end of a year and there's a huge bonus, and there's like all of this money that lands in my bank account, significant. And while that was a nice thing, it was just kind of a nice thing. And then there were moments when something extraordinary took place and somebody walked over and gave me a hug and told me that their life had been changed, and I moved to tears.
Yeah.
That reward is so much more valuable and precious, and still brings up feelings in me when I even say it. That measure of success was so much more meaningful than another deposit into the bank account.
Yeah.
And I think what I heard from you is helping people discover and measure for themselves what's meaningful.
Yes.
Because if we know what we're after, the chance of getting it is much more possible.
Yeah, you threaded my ramble together nicely and with what Gary said is passion and commitment, and then the meaning, the purpose is what I would put in the middle of, if you know your why, but not just your top line why, your second, third, fourth, fifth why, like your whys on multiple layers, and the meaning and depth of what it means to you, that gives you the commitment to fulfill the dream, and the dream may evolve as you go along, but you are committed. If you don't have the depth of personal meaning behind it, it's very hard to stay motivated, because we're all creatures of habit, however flexible we are. And I always say to people, try and get dressed in a different way and see how awkward it is, and I challenge myself. I'm like, I teach this, come on. And it's really awkward. We just default. But if it's that challenging, to do something so simple, it should give us an example of how we have to have a depth of meaning and commitment to evolve, but also patience. So it's like commitment, patience, and flexibility, because so often it's like, I'm on this, I'm on it, and then something happens and then you're off it. And people, when I say be flexible, they're like, but then it won't happen. I'm like, it will. You're like committed, but you're flexible to the life things, and you're adaptable. But that takes time, and everyone's way of being motivated is slightly different. So it's understanding yourself and meeting yourself there.
I could just sit in this for like another 20 minutes, but that's probably not good for the listener. So
probably not, no.
It's wonderful, Kim. I'd just like to just explore a little bit with you, because I know chaos is just a really interesting, like, people listening to us know, like, yeah, it feels pretty chaotic right now. But
Yeah.
I'm really interested in your sort of lens and all of that, because what I'm hearing is, as we've spoken today, like, we are in the moment human beings, but it's almost like you're helping people feel back, sense back to being okay with that chaos, that continuous change, and almost thriving in it. And I'm wondering what you'd speak to that or challenge.
Oh, big question. Good question. I think firstly, you may not be okay in chaos, and it's okay to acknowledge you're not okay, but then work out like what you're doing that isn't okay that you want to change. Because I think that the taglines of like, it's okay that you're not okay, I've thought about this a lot, and it is okay if someone's not okay, but for me with my role, it's not okay that they're not okay, just not okay. There's the delivery that I warned you about. Give me 1 second.
So Mike, what's the overarching thing coming up for you from our conversation with Kim so far? So, like, the number one essential reflection.
I'm sitting in it so well, and I'm thinking, Kim's unique background into this is something that's often missed, and that is, well, she talked about her challenges growing up, right? That's one experiential lens that she's been able to understand and to bring to light to help people. And then when I'm listening to her and how she's approaching and bringing people through things, I am seeing that athlete in action. And for me, that's really standing out strong, Gary, is that self-knowledge, self-discovery, and that athlete in action, because, and even as we talk about chaos, right? A game of athletics or a race is in ways chaotic, because there's, all these elements that we can't control, we don't understand. Kim talked about the weather, there's other things when it's a group activity, all the different factors of the different people. Gary just asked, as you were picking up the parcel, what was coming up for me, Kim, and what I was saying is that your athleticism, your athletic mindset is so present, and that's really, it's drawing a theme. And even I'll say this, and here's when you're running a race, right? And even when we look at our own vulnerability and our own self-doubt and everything, when you're running a race, I'm sure that when you look to somebody else that's running alongside you, you might have that thought of, oh my gosh, their stride is so effortless and beautiful, and why am I working so hard? And they look like they're just floating in their shoes, right? And we realize that we each have our own stride. They are different. Our perception of the other person and their stride is something that we construct in our own minds. And but that ability to be self-aware, to focus on your strength and keep moving through it, that's what that athletic mindset, that's where I was seeing that stream come through it.
Yeah, and I like when you pick up on, say you're running next to someone, or even just walking, down the street, and you see someone and you do a comparison, and it's normal, like human nature to observe. When people say don't judge, I hope I hold a very non-judgmental, practice and clinic and space with people, but equally, you just observe things, and we all have different filters that just happen. And if an athlete or an individual says, I see that person and I wish I was, I say, don't worry about that, but write down what you wish you were, and let's work with how you can move towards that. So actually, maybe you could. So you can use that person as like a model of inspiration or excellence. And it's not the whole person, it's just some of the qualities that you're seeing in them. And then maybe when you look at that and you work out the practicalities of it, you look at it and you go, hey, I respect that person, but my lifestyle doesn't give me the time to achieve that. So I'm going to stop sabotaging myself, because I realize that I, can't do that. And those are constant things that, however much personal development or growth you've done, we have to evolve, like everything is evolving. So we may still get challenged by the same things. And often clients will say, oh, I've let myself down because I feel this again. And I used to kind of beat myself up too, because I was like, hey, I'm a coach, I should have done ABC. And actually, the more like vulnerable, that ties in with this, but the more vulnerable you can be and the more committed you can be, the more you can help yourself but help others, and you can expand like that reach of humanness, which I just feel is so important, particularly during these times. And with people being isolated and having less human contact and interaction, and I've done a lot of study, but I'm not an expert, around trauma and stress. And in essence, I feel, slightly going backwards to one of your questions, but, there's a lot of stress in the world in many areas, and not going into that now, but that heightened stress will put us all into a fight or flight state at times. So I've noticed a pattern of people either being like completely switched on the whole time, so running off adrenaline and sleep and everything's affected, and they're telling me like I'm going to burn out, but I can't stop. And then others who are doing the like lie down and like let's hide so that the threat can pass us by, and their creativity is stopped and they're stuck. And I've experienced both in phases of my life, and so that's where I can see it and feel it in clients. And I say that's where you have to acknowledge how you're feeling, not say I should or shouldn't feel something, because we have to understand that we're still animals and our body our body does so many amazing things without us realizing it. And so if we're stressed, it's like, how can I calm my system and then get the basic habits that work for you back in place, and then you will be able to evolve in chaos. But I think in the chaos that we're in at the moment, it is completely okay to have a day where you're flowing and it works, and then the next, or 2 or 3 days, and then the next day you're hibernating or you're, you know, overdoing it. And that, but it's knowing that, and it's going, hey, I did that, maybe I should, you know, have a little bit more food, or maybe I should just watch a movie because I need to switch, you know, off, or maybe just read an easy book rather than a learning book, or call a friend rather than a client. You know, all of these is like knowing what are your things that could be considered that's really good, but you know is like an overdoing, say, pattern for you. And that's why I say everyone's different, because, you know, someone's going for a run could be beneficial for them, and the other person, it may be an addictive quality that maybe they need the rest day. So it's like, what do you need today?
I love that. You know, in that stress and chaos, right? And we know, as you just said, stress pokes a lot of holes in that resilience bucket that you were talking about, right? Stress is just puncturing holes and resilience is leaking out. But you have such a healthy view of control, or the illusion of control. And you know, when we talk chaos, right? The chaos is either fear of lack of control, or it's not knowing that we have choice in the chaos. And I think you address that so well, Kim, where you talk about all of the choices we get to make that are within us, in our control, to make those choices to address the chaos we're experiencing without having to look at it being something outside of us. And I thought that was really brilliant. And then what you bring to it is, and I think I've experienced so many people struggle with, is the greater fear is the loss of that sense of control. And that uncertainty makes the chaos like 10 times bigger than it actually is.
I think maybe to context, because you haven't touched it. So why I think I've become good, to use your word, at like managing state, so managing myself, is that, you know, 2013, when I got really, really sick and, you know, like kind of didn't even know who my name was, and, you know, had 18 months really of everything. I was like on a high, and, you know, competing at a high level of sport. My business was about to, you know, go to the next level. And, you know, within 48 hours, everything had gone. And, you know, even like down to like my relationship had gone, and like everything went. And it was one of the hardest things, and it still influences my life in terms of physically. So that gave me a sense of, you actually are never in control of anything. And the only thing you are in control of is yourself. But even that, you're only in control sometimes of some of it. So you better get to know yourself and all the bits that you actually don't like, as well as what you do like, because you could lose it all. And if you lose it all, as not all, but I lost a lot, I actually lost a lot of my old identity as well, which I really struggled with. And I kept saying, you know, this isn't me, this is what I used to do. And then it took me a long time to work through, this is you now. And I didn't want to accept me now, because I loved what I was doing before, but that was preventing me progressing. And then I would say I kind of got through that section, and then relationship broke down, and one of my very good friends, who was also my cousin, best sort of buddy in Bristol, only family members together, and I've only recently been talking about it, so I always feel vulnerable sharing, but it will help the listeners to context. She took her life, and so again, if anyone relates, I apologize, but also hopefully this is helping. But it was not that there's a usual way of suicide, but it was a 48-hour search. I was the only family member present. There was water involved. It impacted me, but much later. because I have a diverse range of professional tools. B, there wasn't an option in terms of I was the only family member, so it was very intense. And this is where I'm talking about like fight or flight and stress response. It doesn't matter how you respond in a stressful situation, and people often feel guilty if they don't like show up or whatever, but you can't, you know, you have to own how you feel, and that's fine. Like, be compassionate. I sort of was in the overdrive, and I was in the time thinking, wow, this is like, I'm not sleeping, I'm doing all these things. I'm, you know, this, I'm fine. And I knew that it would come and affect me, but I didn't know when. And I was kind of, and then it took a long time, like months. And I thought, hey, I've written this out because I've done my like notes and all this stuff. And then, yeah, the sort of flashbacks and the trauma from it was very, very severe. And then they still happen. And it affected me, again, very much in terms of when you're talking about chaos and identity. It was like another layer of like, well, who am I now? And like, you can imagine around, so there were lots of questions and lots of things, and a lot of people's anger was then projected to me, and it wasn't me, but it came to me. And I had to do a lot of questioning, because a lot of the questioning that I was questioning myself with. And so it was like, I'm doing this with my hands, but it was like a back and forth of like, work through this. And, you know, everyone says everything happens for a reason. I don't know if I know that now, but what I know is everything happens, and you have to make sense of what happens. Because, you know, maybe everything does happen for a reason, I don't know. But if you say everything happens for a reason, but you don't explore the sense for yourself, you just say, well, it happens, then you can't, in my belief, like fully heal if it's something really impacting. But also if it's something really joyous, you're not going to share it either. So you have to make sense of that. And it's really important that you make sense of the joy and the happy moments too. And I hope the listeners hear this, because so many people just, when they're okay and they're good, they just are in that moment. Like we're talking about, they feel it and they're just like, it's great, but they never, if you just pause and think, do you share all of those good things as much as like the stress? And it's like a default to go into like the stress, but imagine if we actually shared the memories of all the good as well, and the little bits, you know, like it's a nice day, and I'm grateful that it's a nice day, and like those small things. But I think hopefully that context a little bit to help people of like the professional skills, but also the personal journey of, you can do all the affirmations and you can do all the visioning and everything that you wish, but you have to know yourself when, you know, everything gets tough. And some of that is just going to curveball you from wherever. And it may not, but if the more resilient you are, the better you can cope.
Thank you, Kim, for being vulnerable, and thank you for sharing, and sending you lots of love for what you shared with us. But I think I just can't get over your grounded presence. Like, it's drawing
Thank
me.
you.
Like it's beautiful is the word I will use. It's just that. And you're also holding the mirror up to my own thinking around celebration. I'm terrible at going, look what happened the last week, the last month, the last year. Like, I never am grateful for progress. It's always about now and going forward.
Please be.
And you're really reminding me of the importance of celebrating and reflecting.
Like, please be, both of you. And again, it doesn't need to be on like publicly, because that's the other thing. I've seen people share it publicly, but then they don't believe it themselves. You know, they don't actually share it with themselves. They don't say, I'm really proud. And I hold my hands up. Like, I find it hard, particularly when, as a coach, I have high expectations of myself, and I feel like the human side like failed in some things because of the things that have happened, and therefore my life outcome isn't quite where or not at all where I thought it would end up at the moment. So I have those moments of like, you failed, but that's human. And I'm like, it's so important we share the joy with ourselves. Because we often are like, internal chat of like, I'm not good enough, and external go, oh, but I did this. And then internally, you're not feeling it. And so if somebody could take one thing, it's like the things you've done that make you happy, tell yourself, remind yourself, write it down, tell the people you care about. I cannot name how many clients, not their names, I'd never do that, it's so confidential, but name how many of them have told me things that I'm like, just have that conversation with the person you love, with your coach, with your dog, just actually have that conversation, because I'm providing a safe, confidential, respectful space. So they tell me. And the first thing I say, I'm like, have you said that to them? No, not exactly. I said this. I'm like, but that's not that. And so the sharing, I would love it to be with those people you care about. And that's where we feel most vulnerable. And that's where we are least inclined to do it, in my experience. I know that there are many amazing, beautiful, sharing, nurturing groups, but there are also, I think, areas where we could grow that.
People are challenged. When people are challenged, the sense of self that you've so wonderfully covered from many angles here, Kim, is fabulous. And what's coming up is how clear it is that, and I'm curious with the people you coach, limitations are more from the outside or from the inside?
They come to me from an outside limitation, I would say 99% of the time. This is like on the spot question. We hadn't prepared these. So this is just, and within, so I have a very comprehensive consultation, like pre-consultation form. And that normally gets someone itching their head a bit, scratching and going, this isn't just like an ABC form. And so that gets them thinking, and then they come in and go, oh yeah, maybe there's some other stuff. And we just have a chat. And I would say 100% there's internal as well. But the motivator is an external, either event or fear or, relationship confrontation in either like the athletic sense or, the personal sense that's affecting performance, or maybe like it's an injury that they then have a fear of. But it's all an external, which is normal. I think it's safe. And because I'm very performance and I'd say, action orientated of like seeing your potential, it allows people to have the safe space of, we're still going to be able to do our cool stuff in life, but maybe we'll feel happier and more well, and we'll let go of some of the sabotage along the way. But we didn't come in with that, because that would be kind of vulnerable. And interestingly, like I hadn't sort of looked at it, but half my client base is male. And I've always been curious, recently having realized that, it's just interesting, because I've coached for many, many years, and a lot of the men are word of mouth through someone else who's like, oh, you should go and see, Kim, and they kind of come in and like, or they call me, whether it's on Skype, wherever they are in the world, and they say, someone said I should speak to you. And that's it, like that's what I've got to start with. And but it's great, because I really, really, really respect them for just showing up to some random woman and going, someone said, like, how amazing is that? I feel so grateful that they're there. And then I'm like, how can I help this amazing person because they've showed up? So that's how I see it.
It's beautiful, Kim. Like I'm looking at the clock now because I just want to go for another hour, but really conscious of Kim's time more than yours or mine, Mike. So you did kindly give one invitation recently, actually, Kim, as you were speaking, but I'd love to just give you the opportunity to have the last word, if I may. What would you like our listeners to take away? Like, if there was like we know it's not about a silver bullet, but what's the one thing you'd like them to take away and reflect on after listening to this conversation?
I often get one thing I never give one thing, but I'll try. I'm not actually, there's going to be 2 or 3 with this situation. Is that okay?
Of course.
So because we're in the pandemic and all the chaos, I think the first thing I would say is if people got a piece of paper right now and they just took a deep breath and they wrote down how they felt, not how they think they should feel, but how they're feeling now. So tired, happy, sad, stuck, overwhelmed, whatever. And then drew a line and put how would they like to feel. And then drew another line and went, what habit would help you do that? And then a line of, is there anybody you need or know that could support you to do that? That first line would be great. Then share, like write something down that makes you feel happy. So a feeling just in your current situation, a person and a place. If you've got access to a printer or photos, find photos of those people and places, because it will stimulate your nervous system into remembering those things, which will help you, however good or not good you're feeling. And then either connect with that person if they're still with us in the world, or connect, like write down who you'd like to connect with and how. And yeah, if you do that most days, not every day, but most days for, you know, the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'd be curious to see how you flow with it.
I'm buzzing. I'm like, I'm going to do this. Like, it's awesome. It's
cool.
Kim, that's such a wonderful invitation. Look, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Kim, for joining. How can people find you, Kim, if they want to continue the conversation or connect with you following this chat?
I'm just at Kim Ingelby everywhere, which is really the, you know, on all the social mediums, or Kim at Energized, which is GISED at the end of performance.com. So energizedperformance.com. And just, you know, let me know. I'm on all of the social medias, but I also am not like super active. So just put me a message, because at the moment I'm doing lots of different volunteering and, you know, looking after my clients and things. So, but I will get back to people 100%. And it's been a great pleasure, privilege to talk to you both. So thank you for having me on.
Pleasure's all ours, I think, Mike.
Absolutely. Kim, this is just wonderful. And I've written down, I already started the exercise that you posed to us, and you bring a lot of hope for the choices we all have to step through wherever we are. And I just love the encouragement of owning it, that it's okay. And there's just so much hope in your message, and this was brilliant. Thank you for letting me be the third wheel.
I am going to say one thing now, because you said, you know, the quote, there's anything is always possible. I have found through the last experiences, like, not everything is always possible, but something is always possible. And that's been my mantra. And when you said hope, I think one thing, Gary, yes, have hope and find your something that is possible, because there is always something.
Wow, mic drop finish. Thank you very much, Kim. Cheers, Mike. Thanks, Kim.